Okay, so for this session you're going to need a couple of props. So ideally a block. If you don't have a block, you can use like a thick book or something that's just going to help you have a little bit of height. It needs to be something steady because you're going to be standing on it. And then also, if you have any elastics anywhere, grab it and tie it in a little knot so that you've made a circle. You can do this without elastics, but this just gives you a little bit more resistance, so it just makes it a little bit more work. You can pick these up really cheaply on eBay, places like that. I think I actually got this one from Aldi when I was in there doing a shop and I just saw them in those baskets. So if you don't have one, don't worry, carry on, but see if you can pick one up from somewhere because it is a really good tool to use. And the other thing that you're going to need is a chair, like a dining room chair. If you don't have a chair, just something that's about chair height. So again, you're going to be sitting on it, so it needs to be fairly sturdy. If you're using a coffee table or something, make sure it's going to hold your weight. You could do it on perhaps on the corner of your bed or your couch, or just something that is safe for you to sit on. Okay, we're going to start with a hip shift. So take your feet to just a little bit wider than hip width apart. I want you to just shift your hips side to side to begin with. So just shift, a little bit of movement there. It should feel quite nice. Getting a little bit of a stretch into the hips. And then I want you to notice where your weight is in your feet. Is it back through your heels? Is it through your toes? Notice, don't try and change anything, but just notice where your weight has naturally gone. And then I want you to notice where your hips are. So as you shift side to side, are your hips quite forwards or quite back? Again, just notice where you naturally carry your weight. So if I was to drop like a plumb line from my hip down, it would go towards my toes because my hips are shifted forward, so all my weight is over my toes, as opposed to when I shift my hips back, if I was to drop a plumb line there, it would go straight over the outside of my ankle. Yeah, so just notice where you are, and don't change that to begin with. So we're just noticing where naturally your body tends to sit. And then we are going to shift our hips forwards and back. So if you think about again that little plumb line that you're dropping, drop the plumb line over your toes and then back it up over your heels. So we're shifting the hips forwards and back. And notice here how tempting it is to kind of shift your shoulders back to take your hips forwards. Shoulders are going to stay where they are. So your shoulder and your heel are kind of in the same position. It's just your hips that are shifting forwards and back. And that might feel a little bit weird, a little bit alien to you, but that's okay. Just kind of have a little play with that movement. Notice if you're tempted to lift and lower your ribs, because quite often we want to move the ribs instead of the hips. So keep the ribs down, keep the shoulders still, and can you shift your hips forwards and backwards? We spend so much time in that seated position so that our hips are kind of in that kind of closed position all the time, that when we try and fully open the hips, they don't like it because they having to then stretch, they don't maintain length that you don't use. So they tend to adapt to the positions that you're in most of the time, which for most of us is seated. Okay, and then we're going to do like a little circle of your hips. Really focus on that forwards point. So we're getting that stretch. Let's go the other way. Circle your hips. You can kind of feel as you come forwards how it stretches the front. Good. Alright. And then we're going to shift our hips forwards now. So again, think about shoulders stay where they are, ribs stay down, hips shift forwards. And then can you do your hip shift side to side in that forwards position? How does that feel? So that might feel, again, quite alien to you. Just keep going. Yeah, completely different. Just a completely different sensation to when you do it with your hips back. All right. Now we're going to internally rotate our thighs. So I don't want the movement to be your foot, I want it to come right from your hip. Can you turn your thigh bone in, so your foot is going to turn in on both sides, so the thigh bones are rolled in. So if you were to bend your knees now, knees would come together. So we're in that internal rotation, thigh bones rolled in. All right, hip shift here. Again, just really interesting sensations. Interesting is a good word, isn't it? Interesting sensations, because your hip is now moving in a way that perhaps it doesn't normally move. So we're changing the stretch to the hip. And just notice what your body's doing here. So your ribs wanting to lift. So my feet are wanting to lift, my toes are kind of wanting to lift, and I'm wanting to roll onto the outside edges of my feet. So just notice with you if there's anything that your body's trying to do to kind of compensate for this weird sensation. How about still staying in that rolled in position? Can you shift your hips forwards and shift side to side there in that forwards position? It feels like we're stretching things that don't normally get stretched. It kind of feels like getting rid of the cobwebs. And you might not be able to move as far doing your side to side here, that's okay. Maybe you can feel a little bit of stretching to your waist. It's kind of a movement exploration. I like those, where you're just playing and noticing. How about we're still turned in, we're going to do the circle of your hips. Again, focus on that coming forwards. And then go the other way. Just let your legs have a little minute there, just shake your legs out. Let's just do a little reset, let's just do a little rounding forwards, letting your arms hang, letting your head hang. You can bend your knees if you want to, you can kind of hold behind your knees if you want to. Just find a position that kind of feels alright for you for a moment. Just to reset, relax. And just take a few breaths. Maybe it feels nice to straighten and bend your knees a few times. Alright, we're going to come up and out of that. So let's have a look at our legs in external rotation this time. So we're going to turn the thigh bone out from the hip socket. Again, that will turn your feet out, but the movement isn't, you could just turn your foot out and not actually change the position of your thigh. You know, if you're quite mobile through your feet and ankles, but we want to make sure that we're turning the thigh out, turning the thigh out. Hip shift, just in your normal position, side to side. You will find that one position will probably feel better for you, whether that's internally rotated, so rolled in, or externally rotated and rolled out. One of them will feel more natural to you, kind of have a default position. And for me it's turned out. I'm much more comfortable in this turned out position. Being turned in just feels wrong. Shift your hips forwards. Can you do side to side? Forwards. Keep a check on those ribs. We don't want to be arching our back. And again, making sure that as you shift your hips forwards, that you're not leaning your shoulders back. Can we do those circles in that turned out position? Reverse. Good job. All right, and then just give your legs a little shake out. So we're going to do our little monster walk now. So this is where you need your elastic. If you don't have one today, don't worry about it. It needs to be something that has a little bit of stretch. I was just trying to think if you could use something else. You could probably, if you have a strap, like your yoga strap, you could probably tie a knot in this and just make the circle you know, a fairly small size, but then you just have to make sure you didn't trip over the ends and tuck them in. And then you just need to keep tension on this all of the time. It is easier with an elastic, but, you know, I kind of like adapting whatever you've got at home. So whether you've got something or not, it doesn't matter. I'm going to pop it around our ankles, just above your ankles, and if you don't have anything, you're just going to, again, take your feet to hip width apart. You're going to have your feet pointing forwards, and we're going to take little tiny side steps. So little step, and if you have an elastic, you're going to keep tension on it the whole time. So you're not just going to like let it drop, you're going to keep tension the whole time as you do little tiny steps. You're going to go all the way to one side of your mat, and then you're going to come back and go all the way to the other side. And again, notice here, ribs down. Notice if your feet are turning out. We tend to be much stronger through the front of the thighs, so naturally your body will want to turn that thigh out to use your quads rather than your lateral hips. We're going to make sure that our feet stay pointed forwards, ribs stay down, and again. So if you don't have an elastic, you're just imagining that you've got something there, you're still keeping that same distance between your feet and creating your own resistance. Is it starting to hurt yet? Keep going. All right, last time. All right, pause there. Oh, just give your legs a little wriggle, shake them out a little bit. Notice that I've not taken the elastic off, which means that there's more to do. We're going to try that now in internal rotation. So the more we roll our thighs in, the more we're going to be using like the outside hip and coming around into your glutes, as opposed to when we turn it out and it's more quads. We use our quads for everything. They tend to not need strengthening as much as they need releasing. So we're going to do it turned in. So turning the thigh bones in from the hip, remember not just the feet. So bend your knees just to check, knees coming together. And then again, a little step, side step, side step. Ooh, interesting. Yeah, maybe not interesting. Painful. Disgusting. All right, keep going. Already it's feeling like a lot of work for my hips. As I said before, I don't like being in this position. My body naturally wants to turn out. Maybe you like this position and you don't like turn out. Keep going, making sure you're staying in that turned in position. Watch again for ribs lifting, leaning forwards. This is tough. We're nearly there. Last little step this way. Are your legs still working? I think I'm sort of dragging mine now. Oh, rest. Get rid of your elastic. Whew. Kick it off. Give your legs a little shake out. Let's do our little reset again. I'm going to roll forwards. Oh. How does that feel? Relief. Again, wherever's comfortable for you, you can have your knees bent, you can hold behind your knees, you can kind of rock gently side to side. Straighten and bend your knees, whatever you need to do. All right. Coming up. So, I'm going to make our block next. So grab your block or your big book, whatever you've got. I just have a big stack of paper here, so a printer paper, that would be a good thing to stand on. So just something to give you a little bit of height, but I do have a very chewed block that Freddie has decided to claim as his. So pelvic list. we're going to stand on the block. Now, if you don't have anything to stand on, or anything that's safe to stand on, you can do this on the floor. And obviously we've done pelvic lift on the floor before, so that's absolutely fine. But we're going to stand one foot on the block if we've got one, and we're going to press this leg on the block down to allow the other side to lift and then lower. So the good thing about having something with a little bit of height just means you've got more range, and then as you lower your leg down, you're kind of getting a good stretch through the hip as well. Now, if you happen to have an artificial hip, you wouldn't stand on the block. You could still do this movement, but you would be staying on the floor doing it. You'd want to limit the range of movement there. Seeing if you can do this without putting your foot all the way down, but if you need to for balance, then do. And you always can hold on to a wall if you need some support, if you just feel that your balance is a little bit off today. Alright, let's switch sides. Same on the other side. So really be aware of your alignment here. So as you're standing on the block, I want you to just bend your knee and just notice, is that knee wanting to roll in? And if so, can you think about turning your thigh bone out just enough so that knee will go forwards? So you might have to think about turning that thigh bone out in the hip socket a little bit. Just enough to make the knee track straight ahead, and then you can do your list on that side. Now, always you have one side that's better than the other, so if you need to get rid of your block on one side and just do the list on the floor, that's absolutely fine. It's always about working with your body where it is today. Can you get your weight back through your heel here? So notice if all of your weight is forwards, or those hips shifted forward, can you back your hips up and get your weight back over your heel? And that's kind of the position that we want to be in most of the time, because then it's activating our glutes and the back line of the body. We're just doing a lot of hip forward stuff today to stretch out the front of the hips that tend to be in that seated position all the time. Oh, let's go back to the other side. So again, we're going to have weight back through the heel. You're going to check that that knee is going straight ahead and it isn't rolling in. If it's rolling in, how much turnout do you need to get that knee going forwards? And then notice whether you're having to lean to one side. Can you try and stay as upright as you can? My block's gone soft and I'm sinking down into it. I think I need a new block. Good. So we're doing a few of these because we want to increase our stamina here. We want to be able to hold our own body weight to the other side again, because it's important that we have enough strength in the hip to hold all of our weight for when we're walking, so that as we swing our leg through when we're walking, that we're not collapsing on this hip. So that's why we need strength and stamina in that hip. So same on this side, pressing that foot down. How much do you need to turn your thigh bone out to make your knee go forward so that it isn't rolling in? Weight back through your heel. And if you don't have anything to stand on right now, you could do this off a step. You know, if your bottom step, stand on the bottom stair and lift and lower the leg that's not on the step, front door step, wherever you've got a little bit of a step. A break. All right. And come on off. Oh, give your legs a little shake. How are those hips feeling? Pop your block to one side so that you aren't going to fall over it. Feet a little bit wider than hip width, and let's just shift our hips side to side. So you can feel, as you shift your hips side to side, we're getting the stretch of those lateral hips that you've just been working, yeah? Also getting a little bit of a stretch of your inner thighs. It's kind of nice. As you go to one side this time, hold it there. So we've got our hips shifted to one side, getting that stretch through the hip. We're going to stretch our waist now. So let's take our arms up and overhead, and I'm holding on to, I've got my hip shifted to the right, my right hand is up, so I'm going to hold on to my right wrist with my left hand, and I'm going to take it into a little side bend here. So you're looking to try and get a stretch at the waist. Come back up. Same on the other side. Shift your hips to the other side, switch your hands over, and stretch into your waist on the other side. Go back to the other side again. Now often, what tends to happen here, you carry on stretching, what tends to happen here is that we're quite mobile through the hips, so we can shift our hips to one side, and then we'll kind of use the shoulders to stretch to one side. So I've shifted my hips, I've pulled my shoulders, I haven't actually moved my waist there at all. So quite often we're not able to move our waist very well. Let's switch to the other side. So I want you to really shift your hips to one side, think about length through the waist, and then can you move your waist before you move your shoulders? And I've got another really good way of helping you to find that. So coming out of that, you need to come against a wall now, or a door, or something that you can lean on. Again, if you don't have access to it right this minute, you can do it again afterwards. But you're going to stand against the wall, have your feet just a little bit away from the wall so that you're not going to fall over, and then you're going to shift your hips into the wall. So my hips are now leaning on the wall. I'm going to take my arms up and overhead, and I'm going to then start to move away from the wall. So I'm thinking about hips stay pushing into the wall, rib cage is kind of peeling away from the wall. Hold there and just take some deep breaths. So now you should be into your waist. Hips stay pressing in, rib cage is peeling, pulling away from the wall. If it bothers your shoulders, you can kind of bring your shoulders forwards. You can support your shoulders overhead, kind of use your other hand to help pull it away. But really I'm here thinking more about the position of the waist. So notice if your ribs are lifting. If your ribs are lifting, it's going to feel like compression and tightness in your lower back. So ribs want to stay down. Ribs are over pelvis, but they're just reaching away from the wall. Come on, do that on the other side. So again, feet just a little bit away from the wall. You're going to lean your hips into the wall, take your arms up and overhead, and then you're going to reach your rib cage away. So don't just pull the shoulders away and rib cage doesn't move. Hips in the wall, rib cage moves away from the wall, and then you can give yourself just that little bit more stretch with the shoulders. How does that feel? That might just have woken up your waist. Notice if there is a tendency to twist here. So my body's pulling this way, it's wanting me to twist rather than to lean. And that's because my waist is happier twisting than it is stretching and side bending. So just notice ribs over hips, and is it a side bend or are you twisting? Coming up. Let's do the other side again. So you can either, so again, hips into the wall, pulling the ribs away, so think about that waist stretch. I mean, you can either just hold it here, or you can keep coming in and out of it. Because sometimes your body will respond better to stretching and releasing with movement rather than just holding. Sometimes just holding will create tension. So you're just being aware of how it feels in your own body. And I like to play around and do a little bit of both. Sometimes I'll move, sometimes I'll just stay still. So good. Let's again go back to the other side. Hips into the wall, ribs reaching away, your waist is lengthening, stretching. Watch for that rotation. It should feel good. It should feel like you're moving things that don't often move. Clearing the cobwebs. All right, arms down. Let's reset where we're going to go. Let's do our little round and down again. Let everything go. And I have a bent knee this time. Sticking my bottom out. I'm just going to shift around letting my arms hang, letting my head hang. Take a couple of breaths. Maybe bend and straighten a few times if that feels good to you. Just doing whatever feels like you want to do. Alright, come on up. We're going to use our chair now, so grab your chair. To do a lunge, okay, so it's a chair lunge. So we're going to sit and we're going to have the leg closest to the back of the chair is going to go forwards, and then the other leg is just going to kind of drop down towards the floor. So you're kind of in a lunge position. And we're going to play around with this a little bit, so don't worry too much. But I want you to notice the position of your pelvis. Now that you're seated, we still want to try and find a neutral pelvis like we do when we're lunging. So can you find your sit bones and have your hip bones and your pubic bone on the same level, on the same plane? And then this back leg, it doesn't want to be forwards, because when it's forwards, we've still got that bend in the hip, we're still in that chair shape. So we want to take that leg back into a lunge position. So you can shuffle around a little bit here. Maybe you need to come really close to the edge of your chair. Maybe you need to be a little bit further on. Just find what feels okay for you. Try and keep that neutral pelvis. And if you're struggling to find that upright pelvis, maybe get a cushion or something to sit on to lift you up a little bit higher to give you just that more height. But already here in this chair lunge, hopefully it's feeling like a stretch through this back hip, like we do when we're doing lunge, when we're kneeling down. Take some deep breaths, making sure that you aren't arching your back and lifting ribs, so rib cage directly over pelvis. How's that feel? That feels good. Inhale, grow super tall through the crown of your head. Think about lengthening your spine. And as you exhale, we're going to twist towards the front leg, towards the back of the chair. And maybe you can hold on to the back of the chair. So I don't want you to use the back of the chair to crank your spine around. More, it's just giving you that extra bit. So you've already twisted, and then you're holding onto the chair. And you're just using that to perhaps just give you a little bit more of a twist. Notice that temptation to lift the ribs or to tilt the pelvis forwards. We want to keep the pelvis in that same position. And just take some deep breaths here. Each time you exhale, can you twist your rib cage just a little bit more? Okay, release. Oh, come back to the front of the chair. Seated on your chair, can you take your legs wide here? So legs wide. Again, you might need to come a little bit closer to the front edge of your chair. You'll find where you need to be. Can you again find that neutral pelvis? So find your sit bones so that your hip bones and pubic bone are on the same plane. You've not got one tipped forwards of the other. And knees are out wide. Stretching the inner thighs, releasing your hips. How does that feel? Just notice, how does it feel into your hips? Maybe we're going to lean forwards a little bit. Can you bring your forearms down onto your thighs? Can you use your forearms to push your knees wider? And if you need to keep shifting position, shifting forwards, that's fine. So we're tilting forwards, elbows or forearms resting on your thighs. How about doing a little head hang now? If you're going to fall off your chair, then obviously don't add the head hang. But can you keep pushing your knees wide and let your head hang? Taking some deep breaths. Alright, slowly coming up and out of that. Take your legs forwards. You can lean back in your chair. Let your legs just kind of roll in and out a little bit here. So that movement is coming from your hip joint not just your foot, yeah? So the whole leg is rolling in and out. How about, can you point and flex your feet a few times? Can you circle your ankles around in each direction? Allowing your hips again just to open out. We're going to do the lunge on the opposite side this time. So, other leg is forwards this time. Front leg forwards. Back leg is going to drop down off the edge of the chair. Find your neutral pelvis again here. So, sitting on your sit bone. Hip bones directly over pubic bone. Ribs over pelvis. And then again, do you need to take that leg back a little bit? Is it too far forwards? It wants to be either straight down or a little bit further back. If taking it a little bit further back makes you start to lift your ribs and arch your back, then bring it in a little bit. Hold in here. Does it feel different on this side to the other side? And if your chair is a little bit high for you and you're struggling to maybe get the front foot down, you can always use a block or a book or something to pop your foot down onto, because you want to be comfortable in this lunge position. She says comfortable in a lunge position, but it's fine if you need to have something under that front leg. We're going to do our twist again here. So remember, we're going to inhale, we're going to lengthen the spine, really grow tall through the top of the head. And then as you exhale, you're going to twist your body towards the front leg, towards the back of your chair. And then once you're there, you can then hold on to the back of the chair. Take some deep breaths. Making sure your ribs haven't travelled forwards of your pelvis. With each exhale, see if maybe you can twist just a little bit more. Couple more breaths here. And then release. Again. Legs go wide. Find a neutral pelvis-ish. And then again, you're pressing your knees wide. So whether you just want to do that with your hands, or whether you want to lean forwards again with your forearms or your elbows and press the knees wide, and add your head hang here as well if you want to. Keep pressing the knees wide. Taking deep breaths. So there, keep opening out the knees wide, whether you're using your hands, your elbows, whatever you're using. Mobility of the hip joints is so, so important. You know, to keep our own hips forever, which is the goal, you need to make sure that you're moving them all of the time and not just staying in that chair shape all the time, going from, you know, chair to chair throughout your whole life. And if you do have to sit in a chair for work, then stretch your hips while you're there. I mean, even just kind of getting into this position and opening out the hips is really, really beneficial, depending on who's around you when you're doing it. Maybe if you're in a really busy office and everyone can see you, it might not be the best thing to do. But there are lots of exercises that you can do in a chair. Oh. All right, we're going to do it again. Bring your legs forwards. And again, lean it back, allowing space for the hips to open. Let's roll the legs in and out from the hip. Maybe this is just a kind of a reset. So circling your feet and ankles around. Okay, we're going to go back to that kind of straddle, wide leg position. And I want you to notice where your knees are. So are your knees rolling in? can you get your knee over your foot? So maybe you need to come in a little bit more narrow. You're going to find where you can comfortably have your knee directly over your foot. And once you're there, you're going to see if you can come to standing. Now the first time you do it, if you're on a chair rather than a coffee table and you've got a back to your chair, hold on to the back of the chair as you come up and lower down. Now if you know that you can do it without holding on, you're just going to come to standing and then sit back down. So it's like a wide-legged squat, like a goddess squat or a straddle squat. So you're noticing as you're coming up, are your knees wanting to roll in? We're going to keep pulling the knees, opening the knees out the whole time. Knees are facing out the whole time. So maybe you don't have to come all the way down to sit. Maybe you can just come down, just tap the chair and come straight back up. Keep opening the knees out. One more time. As you come down this time, we're going to stay down. Okay, we're going to go back to our lunge again. We're going to go back to the first side that we did. So, again, front leg forwards, and the leg that's forwards is the one closest to the back of the chair. Now this time we're kind of in that lunge position again. However, rather than being on the toes like we are for a lunge, I want you to tuck your toes under so it's like the top of the foot stretch. So again, it might take you a little bit of adjusting to get into position. Maybe you need to hold on to the back of the chair, but can you tuck your toes under and be in your top of the foot stretch here? Notice if that leg is forwards. Try and get it so it's straight down or even further back if you can. And hold here. Again, if you're struggling to get your front foot all the way down, you can grab a block or a book or something just to give you a little bit more. It depends how long your legs are, how tall your chair is. So feel free to kind of keep shuffling around. So you want to feel an opening through the hip. You want to feel a bit of a stretch through the top of your foot, maybe through the front of your ankle, your shin. We're going to add the twist here as well because we like that multitasking. Inhale, grow super tall through the crown of your head, and as you exhale, you're going to twist towards the back of your chair, towards that front leg, and then you can place your hands down and just take some deep breaths here. With each exhale, seeing if you can twist maybe a little bit further. Can you keep your rib cage over your pelvis so we're getting a really good twist through your waist. Couple more breaths. So good. All right, let it go. Come back in through center. Straight onto the other side. Turn to the other side. Again, front leg. Back leg. Instead of being on your toes, can you tuck your toes under and be resting on the tops of the toes? Check in with the ribs, check in with the pelvis. So it takes a minute to kind of get every little piece into place. And then once you're happy with that, you're going to add your twist. You're going to inhale, you're going to lengthen through the crown of your head, nice and tall through the spine. As you exhale, you're going to twist towards the back of the chair. Once you've gone as far as you can, you're going to let your hands come down and hold here. Just keep taking nice deep breaths. And with each exhale, you'll see if maybe you can twist just a little bit more. Keep checking that you've not arched your back, so you shouldn't be feeling anything in your lower back here. If you are, pulling those ribs back, keeping your ribs over your pelvis. And if your foot starts to cramp and you need to come out of it, feel free to kind of come out and stretch your foot out the other way. Don't feel that you have to hold it all of this time. Feel free to come in and out of it. I just kind of like this top of the foot stretch. It feels good in a weird, sadistic kind of way. Let's just hold for a couple more breaths. The other thing to notice here is, if you have a lot of tension, is your knee kind of trying to open out to the side? Make sure that knee is just dropped down. So that's another little sneaky way that your body tries to compensate for tension and tightness. Okay, come forwards again. Wide legs. Opening out the knees. How about, can you drop one shoulder down? To stretch one shoulder down. Can you drop the other shoulder down? Now notice, as you drop your shoulder down, does that knee want to come in as well? Keep that knee pressed out as your shoulder comes down. Switch to the other side. Drop your shoulder. And to the other side. So either stay here with your hands on your thighs or come down onto your forearms, your elbows, and again, can you drop one shoulder and the other? Let your head hang if that feels good. And whether you've still got your hands on your thighs or your elbows, just keep dropping each shoulder in turn. Maybe it feels nice to let your arm come down, like one hand come down to the floor. Just wherever feels good to you. It's just about a stretch, but what I want you to notice is whether your knees are rolling in. Can you keep those knees open and pressed out as you drop your shoulder or drop your arm? Come on up. And out of that, we're going to do some more of those little straddle squats, goddess squats. So again, making sure that your knee is over your ankle. We're not going to let them roll in. Can you keep pressing your knees out as you come up to standing and then come back down? So your feet are obviously quite turned out as well. And again, if you need to kind of sit down and have a moment between each one, that's absolutely fine. And if you don't, can you keep going? So instead of sitting down, can you maybe just tap and come straight back up? Two more. Good, last one. And then as you sit down this time, you're going to bring your legs together. So feet and knees, let's go hip width, let's not go fully together. Feet and knees hip width apart. Outside edges of your feet straight. Can you come to stand here and sit down? Make sure that you don't lose your chair. But can you just do a few little sit to stands here? And this is just a different squat. So this is probably a more, one that you're more used to doing. And that's fine. And this is a good squat to do. But today we're focusing more on our wide leg arm. Two more of these. Go back to your wide leg. Again, feet turned out, making sure knees are over ankles, no knees rolling in as you come up and down. Two more. Last one. And then seated on your chair. We're going to cross our legs. The thing I tell you not to do. Can you cross your legs? Get a little bit of a stretch into the hip. Find your neutral pelvis, so sitting on your sit bones, nice and tall. And then can you lean forwards? And again, if you need to kind of just gently come in and out of it, that's fine. So legs are crossed. We're just using this as a hip stretch. I really wouldn't want you sitting in this position all of the time because I feel like it contributes to that weakness of the lateral hips and everything kind of rolling in towards the midline all the time, but we're just using it for a stretch. Shall we try that the other side as you come up this time? And cross your legs. Cross the other way. Nice tall neutral pelvis first, and then again, can you lean your body forwards and back, or you can just hold forwards if you want to.
You can let your arms and your head hang and just kind of hang out here if you want to.
See how it feels for you, or you can keep coming up and down, deepening the hip stretch, and then opening it out a little bit. Alright. As you come up this time, uncross your legs. We're going to go into our number 4 stretch now. So feet and knees hip width apart. We're going to bring one leg up and we're going to cross that ankle over your opposite knee. Okay. And notice whether you've had to kind of lean to one side. Can you try and keep both sit bones anchored down on the chair? Notice if you've had to lift your ribs. Can you keep your ribs relaxing down? Ribs are over pelvis. And if you need to kind of pull your leg a little bit further on, that's fine. If you need to hold it there, that's fine. If you're struggling to maintain that neutral pelvis, don't forget to grab a cushion, something to give you a little bit more height so that you can sit tall. The thing to watch when you're doing a number 4 stretch in a chair is what's going on with this lower leg. So check yourself to make sure that that leg hasn't kind of dropped in. So the reason that that leg would drop in is to make it lower, so it's easier for you to get this leg over. But you can see everything's just kind of collapsing now. So it wants to be in its own little channel where it should be. And then hold in here. Now, if your knee is quite high up, that's okay. That's just tension and tightness in your hip. And the more you do these movements, the easier and the more release you're going to get. So if your knee's up here, that's fine. And if it's really quite tight and painful for you, you can even lean back into the back of your chair just to give you a little bit more space through the hip, and you might find that that allows that hip to come back down a little bit. I prefer if you are sitting tall on a neutral pelvis, but you know, you have to kind of honour your body where it is. And if you're here on a neutral pelvis and everything's scrunched up and you can't breathe and everything feels disgusting, then we have to find some way of allowing you to access the position. So if maybe coming back here and holding here for a while starts to give you more space, it's going to increase that mobility, which will eventually allow you to come here. So you don't want to be struggling. Getting really deep into that hip. So again, if you're sitting in a chair or at a computer all day, this is a nice little stretch that you can do that's quite discreet. People won't really notice you doing this one. You could also do that top of the foot lunge. Again, it's quite discreet. Nobody would really see you doing that, unless maybe you're groaning and finding it really painful. So in this number 4 position, again, maybe can you lean forwards a little bit, and that really gets deep. So if that's too much for you, then fine, stay sitting tall, but know that you can add that little bit of a fall. You can rock in and out of it if that feels good to you. And we're going to do the same on the other side. So releasing that leg, placing it down in its own channel. Seeing if you can bring that leg up and over without using your hands. So can you get that leg up and over? If you can kind of get it nearly there and then you just need to use your hands to get it positioned, that's fine. But don't just use your hands because they're there at the expense of letting the muscles of your leg do the work. So again, trying to find your neutral pelvis, keeping ribs over hips, ribs over your pelvis. How does that feel on that side? Is it the same? How about that bottom leg as it collapsed in? Can you keep it in its own little channel where it should be? Where's that knee? Is it higher on this side, lower on this side? Do you need to lean back a little bit to give you more space? And just hold, take some deep breaths. Again, if you want to, you can add that leaning forwards and back. Or you can just hold it still. as you come up this time. Uncross your legs, straighten your legs out, roll them in and out. Wiggle your feet, maybe circle them around a little bit. Come up to standing, just paddle your feet a little bit here. Take your legs wide, shift your hips side to side. Take them super wide, shift side to side. Let's add that forward fold and shift side to side here. Alright guys. You are done. Well done. So if you have any questions on any of those exercises that you've seen today, let me know. And just next time you're sitting in a chair, see if you can get some little hip stretches in, however that might mean to you. I often will actually start to sit like cross-legged on the chair, or even if you are sitting, cross-legged here, maybe leaning forwards, but just don't get this as your default position that you go into all day, every day. It really doesn't do an awful lot for the strength of your hips. And men have got it, sitting with your legs and knees and feet hip width apart is kind of your best alignment. It's just not the ladylike thing to do. We've been taught, haven't we, knees together to be all demure, but at the health of our hips, I say do what feels good to you. Thank you.